Good morning, students. Now let us continue chapter number 9. Today we are going to discuss the evolution and its classification. Now based on these principles, we have worked out the evolutionary relationship of species we see around us. Now going backward in time, we can say that identifying the hierarchies of characteristics between species. And first of all, in 9th standard also you learnt about the classification of the organisms, similarities, then diversities. Now similarities among organisms will allow us to group them, then study the groups, and characteristics decide the more fundamental differences among these organisms. So the basic difference means characteristics. What is characteristic? These are detail of appearance or behavior. In other words, a particular form or a particular function. That we have 4 limbs, that is our characteristics. And that plants do photosynthesis, that is also one of the characteristic of the plants. But while the animals, they do not perform this activity of these photosynthesis. Some basic characteristics will be shared by most organism. You know that cell is the basic unit of organism, and cell the fundamental unit. The characteristics is next level of classification would be shared by most, but not all organism. Now cell design that differ from one organism to other, and you know that cell has 3 basic parts: nucleus, cytoplasma, and cell membrane. But there are 2 type of cell, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. In 9th standard you learn. So bacteria cell do not possess this nucleus, not well developed, and other organisms do. And some organisms with nucleated cells. Which one? Now unicellular and multicellular also you learnt. Unicellular means the organism they perform all the body function with single cell only. They are called unicellular organism like amoeba and paramecium. Now multicellular means the cell, so many cells, then organs, they perform the different functions. So you know the difference between unicellular and multicellular. The property marks a very basic difference in body design because of specialization of cell types and tissues. Among multicellular organisms, whether they can undertake photosynthesis or not. The next level of classification, among the multicellular organisms that cannot do photosynthesis, well, the skeleton inside the body or around the body will mark another fundamental design difference, means vertebrates and invertebrates. You know about it. We can see that even these few questions that we have asked, hierarchy is developing that allow us to make classification group. Now 2 main characteristics 2 species will have in common. More closely they are related. More closely they are related means more recently they will have in common ancestor. For example, brother and sister, they are having common ancestors, and the common ancestor, the first generation, then namely their parents, a girl, then first cousin, they are also related, but less than the girl and her brother. This is because cousins have common ancestors. They are their grandparents, the second generation before them, not in the first one. We can now appreciate the classification of species, in fact, a reflection of their evolutionary relationship. Now here, the small group of species with recent common ancestors, the supergroups of these groups with more distant common ancestors, and so on. So we can keep going backward like this until we come to know the notion of single species at very beginning of evolutionary time. That case, at one point in history of the earth, non-living material must have given rise to life. There are many theories about how this might have happened. It would be interesting to come up with theories of our own. Now, to see the evolutionary relationships. How to identify the characteristics as common? The different organism would be similar because they are inherited from their common ancestors. For example, the mammals have 4 limbs, as do birds, reptiles and amphibians. The basic structure of limbs is similar, though it has been modified to perform different function at various vertebrates. Such homologous characteristics helps to identify an evolutionary relationship between apparently different species. Now you see that homologous organs means the organs having same structure but they perform the different functions. These type of organs are called homologous organs. For example, the 4 limbs of the frog, of lizard, then birds and human beings. Their limbs are same in structure but they perform the different function. The frog used for jumping, then lizard to hold the grip on the walls to walk, then birds for flying and human beings to catch the things. So their functions are different but the structure is same. So these type of organs, they are having same structure, internal structure is same but they perform different functions. These type of organs are called homologous organs. Means we can say that ancestors may be same in the past. However, the similarities simply in organ shape are not necessarily because common ancestry. What would we think about the wings of bat and birds? You know, birds and bat both are having wings and they use it for flying, but squirrel and lizards do not have the bird wings. So the birds and bats more closely related to each other than the squirrel and lizard. Before we jump to the conclusion, let us look at the wings of birds and bats more closely. We find that the wings of bats are skin folds stretched mainly between elongated fingers, but the wings of birds are featherly covering all along the arm. The design of 2 wings, their structure and components are thus very different. They look similar because they have common use for flying, but their origins are not common. This makes them analogous characteristics. Now, what is the difference between analogous and homologous? Analogous means their structure, internal structure is not same, but the functions are same. Means they are not belong to same ancestors. So that is the major difference between homologous and analogous characteristic. Okay, so it will now be interesting to think about whether the bird arms and bat arms should be considered homologous or analogous. So today you have to complete homologous and analogous organs.